I trusted her completely. No suspicion, no paranoia, no checking phones. I believed that kind of love didn't need proof. And then one message appeared on her screen. One sentence, one name, one moment. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for anything. But what I read didn't just end my relationship. It rewired how I see trust, loyalty, and silence. This is not a story about cheating. This is a story about what happens after the truth shows up. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, listen carefully, because this could save you years of your life. Chapter 1. Trust made me blind, not safe. Before I get into this, let me introduce myself properly. My name's Ethan Walker. I'm from Austin, Texas. I work in commercial real estate development. Numbers, contracts, timelines. My whole life used to run on logic and structure. I believed if you did things right, if you showed up clean, honest, consistent, life would meet you halfway. That belief worked in business. It almost destroyed me in love. This story isn't about me being naive or stupid. I need you to understand that from the start. I wasn't weak. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't clueless. I was in love. And I believed love meant trust. No questions asked. That's where it all went wrong. When I met Lauren, it felt easy. Too easy. She was sharp, funny, grounded. Worked in marketing downtown. Lived in a little condo near South Congress. We'd grab tacos at Torchy's, talk for hours, laugh at dumb stuff. No drama. No chows. It felt adult. Solid. And because it felt solid, I dropped my guard completely. I didn't check her phone. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't wonder where she was or who she was texting. I wore my trust like a badge of honor. I used to say things like, if you love someone, you don't question them. If you trust them, you don't monitor them. I'm not that insecure guy. I thought that made me evolved. What actually made me was blind. Trust, unchecked, doesn't make you safe. It makes you unavailable to reality. At first, the signs were microscopic. The kind you only see in hindsight. She'd take a little longer to reply. She'd read a text and respond an hour later with something short. She stopped sharing random details, little stories about her day, work gossip, stuff she used to talk about nonstop. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could point to and say, that's it. That's the problem. And that's why I ignored it. Because I had an explanation for everything. She's busy. She's stressed. Work's crazy right now. We're just past the honeymoon phase. I filled in the gaps for her. That's emotional blindness. Then came the emotional distance. She was still there physically, still slept next to me, still said love you. But something shifted. Her laughs didn't linger. Her hugs felt quicker. Her eyes didn't sit on me the way they used to. I felt it. Deep down, I felt it. But I didn't say anything. Because I didn't want to be that guy. You know the one. The insecure one. The guy who overthinks. The guy who creates problems. So I swallowed it. I told myself real men don't question love. Real men trust. That belief cost me everything. Then there was the defensiveness. Subtle. Sharp. Out of character. If I asked something simple like, hey, you seem a little off lately. Everything good? She'd snap back with, why are you reading into everything? Can I not just have a bad day? You're being weird. And I backed off immediately. Because I didn't want conflict. I didn't want tension. I didn't want to look controlling. So I apologized. Let that sink in. I apologized for noticing distance. That's how trust without awareness rewires you. You stop trusting yourself first. I want you to hear this clearly. When you trust someone more than you trust your own instincts, you're not loyal. You're disconnected. And I was disconnected from myself. Friends noticed before I did. My buddy Mark, we've known each other since college, pulled me aside one night at a bar on Rainy Street and said, man, she doesn't talk about you the way she used to. I laughed it off, said he was tripping, said he didn't understand our relationship. Another friend, Jess, said, does she ever post you anymore? I shrugged. Social media doesn't matter. And that was true. But patterns do. I ignored all of it. Because trusting her had become part of my identity. Questioning her felt like questioning myself. And here's the real truth nobody tells you. Blind trust doesn't come from confidence. It often comes from fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of conflict. Fear of what you might find if you actually look. I wasn't scared she'd cheat. I was scared I'd have to act if she did. That's uncomfortable to admit. But it's real. Love didn't make me blind. My refusal to tolerate discomfort did. I believed trust meant full access without question. No voluntaries. No modification. No self-check. I thought awareness meant suspicion. I was dead wrong. Awareness is respect for reality. Trust without awareness doesn't protect love. It disables judgment. And disabled judgment invites betrayal. By the time I felt something was truly off, by the time my chest got tight when her phone buzzed, it was already too late. Because I had trained myself not to look. I had trained myself not to ask. I had trained myself to ignore the quiet voice that kept saying, something's not right. That voice never lies. We just learn how to silence it. This chapter isn't about blaming myself. And it's not about villainizing her. It's about understanding how good intentions can become self-betrayal. Trust should be paired with awareness. Love should be paired with presence. Faith should never replace perception. If you're listening to this and thinking, damn, this feels familiar, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. And recognition is where the illusion starts cracking. Because the truth doesn't usually explode into your life. It leaks in quietly, in delayed replies, in defensive tones, in emotional distance you explain away. I didn't lose Lauren the day I found a message. I lost myself months before that. And the moment you lose yourself, anything can walk right past you. That's the real danger. Trust didn't make me safe. It made me blind. And blindness always has a price. Now that you understand how I stopped seeing clearly, you need to understand the moment everything snapped into focus. Because awareness always arrives uninvited. And when it does, it changes everything. Chapter 2. The message I was never meant to see. The night I saw the message wasn't dramatic. That's what still messes with my head. No storm outside. No argument brewing. No gut feeling telling me to check anything. It was a regular Tuesday. Boring, honestly. We were at my place on East 6th, Thai takeout spread across the coffee table, Netflix playing in the background. One of those shows you half-watch while scrolling your phone. Lauren had just gotten out of the shower. Her hair was still damp. She smelled like eucalyptus shampoo. Her phone buzzed on the couch between us. She looked at it and said, "Hey, can you hand me my phone?" That's it. That's how it happened. I picked it up. The screen lit up. And right there, bold, clear, impossible to miss, was the notification preview. I still can't stop thinking about last night. Ryan, that was it. One sentence. No emojis. No context. No explanation. My body reacted before my brain did. My thumb locked up. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped a belt around it. My ears started ringing, high-pitched, like feedback from a mic. I hadn't even processed what it meant yet. I wasn't snooping. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't scroll. It was just there. And in that half second, everything split clean down the middle. Life before that message. Life after it. Lauren reached for the phone. "Thanks, babe," she said casually. I handed it to her. She smiled. Sat back down. Acted completely normal. And that's when denial stepped in. Fast. Smooth. Convincing. I told myself it could be a joke. Maybe an inside thing from work. Maybe something old. Denial doesn't shout. It negotiates. It offers explanations you want to believe. I nodded while she talked, but I wasn't hearing a damn word. That sentence was looping in my head like a broken record. Last night. 2 words. That's all it took. My hands felt cold. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. My mouth went dry. Still, I said nothing. Because once you speak it out loud, it becomes real. Once you say it, there's no putting it back. She got up to grab a drink from the kitchen. Her phone lit up again on the counter. Another buzz. Another preview. I didn't even need to read it this time. I already knew. That was the exact moment denial lost the fight. Because once the first crack forms, everything starts lining up. The late replies. The sudden work dinners. The way she'd angle her phone away from me. The emotional distance I'd explained away for months. None of it was random. It wasn't stress. It wasn't me overthinking. It was a second life. And then came the rewind. My brain started dragging old memories back into the light, one by one, and relabeling them. That girl's night that ended at 2 a.m. The conference in Dallas. The nights she fell asleep with her phone face down. Moments I defended her in turned into evidence. That's the psychological freefall nobody warns you about. You don't just discover the betrayal. You lose your past. Memories feel contaminated. Happy moments start feeling fake. You start asking yourself, how long was I the idiot? I wanted to confront her right then. Every cell in my body wanted to explode. But something else happened instead. I went numb, like my system shut down to keep me from breaking. She came back from the kitchen, sat next to me, leaned into my shoulder. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love, just emptiness. That scared me more than the message. Because anger at least means you're still connected. No means something snapped. I watched her talk, watched her laugh at the show, watched her exist. And all I could think was, who the hell are you? That's when I understood something brutal. Betrayal doesn't announce itself with chaos. It slips in quietly, sits next to you, acts normal, and waits for you to catch up. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, replaying conversations like surveillance footage, looking for the exact moment I should have known. Here's the truth. When reality finally shows itself, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It just shows up, and the battle between denial and truth is intense, but short. Truth always wins. The only question is how much damage denial does before it taps out. The next morning, Lauren kissed me goodbye like nothing had happened. Said she'd text me later. I watched her walk out the door and thought, this might be the last normal moment we ever have. That realization didn't bring anger. It brought weight. Because anger gives you energy. Clarity gives you gravity. I didn't confront her that day, or the day after. Not because I was scared, because I needed to see who she was when she believed I didn't know. And what I learned during that silence changed everything. Because when people think you're blind, they get sloppy. When they think you're clueless, they reveal themselves. The message didn't just expose cheating. It exposed the illusion I'd been living inside. The illusion that trust alone keeps you safe. The illusion that love protects itself. The illusion that ignoring your gut is maturity. One sentence shattered all of it. And once the illusion breaks, you don't get to go back. You either confront immediately or you observe carefully. That choice matters more than most people realize. Because the way you respond to betrayal often decides who walks away in control and who walks away broken. At the time, I didn't know which path I was choosing. I just knew one thing. The message wasn't the real turning point. What came after, the silence, the watching, the waiting, that's where the balance of power shifted. And that's what I need to talk about next. Because confrontation feels strong. But silence? Silence changes everything. Chapter 3. Confrontation changes nothing. Silence changes everything. Everyone thinks confrontation is strength. You find out. You blow up. You demand answers. You force the truth out. That's what movies teach you. That's what your friends hype you up to do. That's what your ego wants. But real life doesn't work like that. I didn't confront Lauren after I saw the message. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even the next week. And yeah, people later asked me, bro, how did you not lose your mind? The truth? I almost did. But something inside me said, shut up. Watch. Learn. Silence wasn't weakness. Silence was strategy. The moment you confront someone, you give them control of the narrative. They switch into defense mode. They cry. They lie. They minimize. They rewrite history in real time. And suddenly, you're arguing about details instead of seeing the truth. I didn't want excuses. I wanted clarity. So I stayed quiet. And once I stopped reacting, something interesting happened. She got comfortable. People always expose themselves when they think you're clueless. Lauren didn't suddenly become sloppy overnight. It was gradual. Small things at first. She started guarding her phone less, leaving it face up on the counter. Smiling at texts she'd quickly swipe away. She started picking fights over dumb stuff. Laundry, dishes, the tone of my voice. Anything to justify emotional distance. Classic move. When guilt builds up, people look for reasons to make you the problem. And because I wasn't reacting, she filled the silence for me. She talked more, overshared, contradicted herself. One night she said Ryan was just a co-worker. 2 weeks later she slipped and said they'd been friends for a while. I didn't correct her. I just nodded. Silence is uncomfortable, especially for someone hiding something. They start talking to relieve the pressure. That's when the truth leaks out. Here's what most people don't understand. When you confront too early, You satisfy your emotions but sabotage your position. I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to understand the reality I was standing in. And silence gave me information confrontation never would. I noticed patterns. She'd be distant after certain workdays, overly affectionate after nights out, defensive when I asked neutral questions, not accusations. Questions. Who were you with? How was the event? What time did you get home? Her tone changed. Her body language tightened. Her answers got vague. That's data. And while she thought I was still the same trusting guy, something inside me shifted. I stopped chasing reassurance. Stopped asking for validation. Stopped trying to fix the vibe. I pulled back. Not dramatically. Not passive-aggressively. Just less available. And here's the part nobody talks about. When you stop reacting emotionally, the power shifts quietly. She noticed. She started checking in more, asking where I was, who I was with. Funny how that works. Silence makes people project their guilt. The less I chased, the more anxious she became, because she couldn't read me anymore. And when someone can't read you, they lose leverage. This is the difference between emotional impulse and emotional intelligence. Impulse wants release. Intelligence wants clarity. I'm not saying silence is easy. It's brutal. You're carrying the weight alone. You're holding conversations in your head you're not allowed to have out loud. You're sleeping next to someone who feels like a stranger. There were nights I wanted to scream. Nights I wanted to grab her phone and throw it across the room. Nights I wanted to force the truth out just to end the uncertainty. But I kept reminding myself of one thing. If she's lying now, she'll lie louder when cornered. And I was right. The more time passed, the more cracks showed. Missed calls, deleted messages, stories that didn't line up. And through all of it, I stayed calm. Not cold. Calm. That scared her more than anger ever could. Because anger proves you're still emotionally dependent. Calm says, I'm already detaching. Here's a hard truth most people don't want to hear. Confrontation feels powerful, but it's often just emotional discharge. Silence feels powerless, but it's actually control. When you don't react, you force the other person to sit with themselves. And most people can't handle that. They either confess, slip up, or escalate their behavior. Either way, you win clarity. Eventually, Lauren started changing her behavior toward me. Less affectionate, more distant, almost like she was preparing herself. That told me everything. Because when someone knows they're wrong, they subconsciously start pulling away to soften the guilt. I didn't need proof anymore. I had certainty, and certainty is dangerous in a good way. Because once you're certain, fear disappears. I wasn't scared to lose her anymore. I was scared of losing myself if I stayed quiet forever. Silence isn't meant to be permanent. It's meant to be strategic. It's a phase, a window, a gathering of truth before action. And that's where most people mess up. They either explode too early or stay silent too long. Both cost you. The goal isn't revenge. It's self-respect. And silence helped me rebuild mine piece by piece. I stopped asking myself, why is she doing this to me? And started asking, what does this say about what I'll tolerate? That question changes everything. Because betrayal doesn't just expose the other person. It exposes your boundaries. And once you see where you've been flexible with your own dignity, you can't unsee it. I wasn't silent because I was weak. I was silent because I was watching. And what I saw prepared me for what came next. Because eventually, silence ends. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with a decision. And the moment I made that decision, everything flipped. The story stopped being about what she did to me and started being about what I was willing to walk away from. That moment deserves its own chapter. Because endings aren't always loud. Sometimes they're clean. Sometimes they're quiet. And sometimes they're permanent. Chapter 4, the apology that was really about her, not me. What you're about to hear isn't theory. It's lived in truth. Because the confrontation finally came. And when it did, it wasn't explosive. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, calculated, and honestly, way more revealing than I expected. It happened on a Tuesday night. Nothing special. No dramatic setup. We were in the kitchen. Lauren leaned against the counter like she always did, arms crossed, already defensive before I said a word. That's how I knew. People who are innocent don't brace themselves. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't even mention the message at first. I just said, "We need to talk." Her eyes dropped immediately. That pause right there? That's when the truth entered the room. I told her I knew. Not how, not when, just that I knew. And that's when the apology started. Not the real kind. The performance. I didn't mean for it to happen. It didn't mean anything. I was just confused. I was in a bad place. Every sentence started with I. That's your first red flag. A real apology acknowledges damage. A fake apology manages guilt. She cried. Of course she cried. Tears are powerful. They shift focus. They pull sympathy. They make you feel like the bad guy for standing your ground. She said she was sorry for hurting me, but she never said she betrayed me. That difference matters. Then came the partial truths. It was only texting. It wasn't physical at first. It only happened a couple times. Each sentence adjusted based on my reaction. That's not honesty. That's negotiation. She kept checking my face, trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could admit without losing control of the situation. That's not remorse. That's damage control. And here's the part that really hit me. She kept saying, "I hate myself for this." Not once did she ask how I was sleeping. Not once did she ask what it did to my trust. Not once did she sit in the discomfort of what she caused. Because the apology wasn't for me. It was for her. She needed relief. She needed forgiveness to quiet her own conscience. She needed me to say, "It's okay," so she could stop feeling like the villain in her own story. And I almost gave it to her. That's the dangerous part. When you care about someone, you want to ease their pain, even when they cause yours. But I learned something by then. Closure doesn't come from explanations. It comes from clarity. So I stopped her mid-sentence. I said, "This apology feels more like you trying to feel better than trying to make things right." She froze. People don't expect honesty during apologies. They expect comfort. She said, "That's not fair." That's another tell. When someone truly takes accountability, they don't argue with your feelings. They sit with them. She wanted to explain the timeline, the stress, the loneliness, the reasons. Reasons are just excuses wearing nicer clothes. And here's what I realized in that moment. If I kept listening, I'd end up comforting the person who betrayed me. That's how people get stuck. They confuse empathy with self-betrayal. I told her I didn't need details. I didn't need to understand her mindset. I didn't need a play-by-play, because understanding doesn't undo damage. And forgiveness without accountability just teaches people how to hurt you again. She asked if we could work through it. That question wasn't about rebuilding trust. It was about avoiding consequences. There was no plan, no ownership, no acknowledgement of what it would take to repair what she broke. Just fear of loss. And fear is not love. Here's something nobody tells you. Apologies after betrayal often sound sincere because the person is genuinely distressed. But distress isn't the same as responsibility. Guilt wants relief. Responsibility wants repair. One wants forgiveness. The other accepts outcomes. Lauren wanted forgiveness. She wanted me to say we'd be okay, so she could stop drowning in shame. But I wasn't responsible for saving her from that. I was responsible for protecting myself. So I told her something that shocked us both. "I don't think this conversation is about me anymore." She looked confused. I said, "You're apologizing so you can sleep at night, not because you're ready to rebuild what you destroyed." Silence filled the room. Not the awkward kind, the honest kind. And in that silence, I finally felt something settle inside me. I didn't need closure from her. I already had it. Because closure isn't an apology. It's acceptance. Acceptance of who someone showed you they were. Acceptance of what you can't unsee. Acceptance that some damage changes the relationship permanently. I told her I needed space. Not to punish her. Not to manipulate her. But because staying would mean betraying myself. She cried harder. Said she didn't recognize herself. Said she'd do anything. But anything came too late. Accountability after exposure isn't courage. It's reaction. And reactions don't rebuild trust. Consistent behavior does. I walked out that night calmer than I'd been in months. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I stopped looking for relief from the person who caused the wound. That's a trap a lot of people fall into. They think one last conversation will heal them. It won't. Explanations don't heal betrayal. Bondades do. Walking away does. Choosing yourself does. That night wasn't about ending a relationship. It was about ending the version of me that tolerated less than I deserved. And once you do that, there's no going back. Because the hardest part isn't losing them. It's facing what comes after. The silence. The rebuilding. The identity shift. That's where the real work begins. And that's exactly where this story goes next. Chapter 5. Walking away was the first time I won. Walking away wasn't dramatic. No slammed doors. No final speeches. No revenge texts sent at 2 a.m. Just me, standing in an empty apartment, staring at walls that still smelled like her shampoo, realizing something brutal and freeing at the same time. I didn't leave because I stopped loving Lauren. I left because I finally started respecting myself. That distinction matters. If you've ever walked away from someone you still cared about, you know the fight I'm talking about. Your heart pulls one way. Your spine pulls the other. Love says stay. Fix it. Try harder. Self-respect says enough is enough. And those two voices do not coexist peacefully. The first few days after I left were rough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'd wake up reaching for my phone, half expecting a message that would magically undo everything. It never came. Instead, what came was silence. Real silence. The kind that forces you to sit with yourself instead of distracting yourself with chaos. That silence was terrifying at first, because when the noise stops, you can't lie to yourself anymore. I replayed everything. The red flags, the excuses, the way I bent myself into shapes just to keep the peace, the way I ignored my gut because I didn't want to lose what felt familiar. That's when it hit me. I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of starting over. And that fear kept me stuck way longer than love ever did. Walking away felt like failure at first. Like I was giving up. Like I was losing something I invested years into. But here's the truth no one tells you. Staying in something that disrespects you isn't loyalty. It's self-abandonment. And I was done abandoning myself. I had options after the breakup. I could have gone scorched earth. Blasted her on social media. Told mutual friends everything. Played the victim. Tried to win the breakup. That urge was real. Revenge feels powerful when you're hurting. But it's fake power. Revenge keeps you emotionally tied to the person who hurt you. It hands them free rent in your head. I didn't want that. So I chose distance. No late-night check-ins. No, just seeing how you're doing texts. No lurking on her socials. Cold turkey. And yeah, it sucked. Distance feels like withdrawal because it is. But every day, I didn't react. Every day, I didn't reach out. Every day, I didn't ask for answers I already had. I got a little stronger. Something shifted about 2 weeks in. I realized I was sleeping better, eating better, thinking clearer. I wasn't constantly bracing for disappointment anymore. Peace replaced anxiety. And peace is addictive. That's when I understood something huge. Walking away wasn't me losing. It was me choosing not to keep paying for someone else's choices. The biggest win wasn't her realizing what she lost. It was me realizing what I gained. Time, energy, self-respect. I started doing things for myself again. Hit the gym consistently. Picked up work projects I'd been half-assing. Reconnected with friends I'd faded on. Not to prove anything, but because I finally had room. Betrayal forces clarity. It strips away illusion. And once illusion is gone, you can't go back to pretending. That's the upgrade nobody talks about. Betrayal doesn't destroy you. It exposes the version of you that tolerated too little. And once you see that, you have two options. Go back to who you were, or become who you've been avoiding. I chose the second. There were moments I missed her. Of course I did. Love doesn't shut off like a switch. But I missed the idea of her more than the reality. I missed who I thought she was. And missing an illusion isn't a reason to return to a bad deal. Here's the part I want you to really hear. Walking away didn't make me bitter. It made me precise. I stopped romanticizing potential. Stopped negotiating boundaries. Stopped confusing chemistry with character. I learned to trust patterns, not promises. And that lesson didn't just change my love life. It changed how I moved through the world. I stopped over-explaining. Stopped chasing validation. Stopped giving access to people who hadn't earned it. Not because I became cold, but because I became clear. That's what winning actually looks like. Not revenge. Not closure conversations. Not glow-up posts. Winning is waking up one day and realizing you don't feel pulled back anymore. Winning is realizing the chapter ended because it was supposed to. And the craziest part? I'm grateful it happened. Not for the pain, but for the upgrade. I would have stayed comfortable and blind if life hadn't forced my hand. Betrayal didn't break me. It forced me to choose myself. And that choice changed everything. So if you're listening to this and you're in the middle of it, confused, hurt, debating whether to stay or go, understand this. Walking away doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally stopped failing yourself. And that's the first real win. Closing statement. That message changed everything. Not because she cheated, but because I finally saw clearly. I stopped asking why it happened and started asking why I tolerated what I felt. I didn't get revenge. I didn't beg. I didn't chase closure from the person who broke me. I chose distance. I chose silence. I chose myself. And that decision did more damage to the past than any argument ever could. If you're listening to this and you're ignoring signs, rationalizing disrespect, or waiting for proof you're afraid to find, this is your moment. Stop looking for answers in their behavior. Start listening to what your discomfort is already telling you. If this story hit you, share it with someone who needs clarity, not comfort. Subscribe for more real stories that don't sugarcoat the truth. And remember this, the message didn't end everything. It ended the illusion. And that's where real freedom begins.